to look into Service Point itself. So we'll navigate a little bit to give you the full experience. So here we go. All right, so one thing I do want to emphasize is that a lot of you, like as I've gone through the names, are all current HMIS users. That was sort of the expectation for coming to this webinar. So we're not changing the overall workflow. And the way that this sort of partnership is designed between interim housing providers and the rapid rehousing partner agencies is that the interim housing providers come across people who really would benefit from rapid rehousing. These are the people that need that quick assistance to get connected. So you're still going to follow your regular workflow to enter them into your interim housing provider program. What we are doing is we're just really focusing on a few things when we talk about changing things up within our workflow as far as the rapid rehousing assessment, which is a referral also goes. So you would have already done your, you would have found your client, created their household or made sure it was correct, put in the release of information that you would normally use, and then also enter them into your program and then anything else that you need to do, whether it's service transactions or case notes. When you're ready to connect them to rapid rehousing, you will simply add an assessment. That is it, and also a consent form for the rapid rehousing project or the program as well. And then once they're connected and hopefully they get to that permanent housing, you'll just simply exit them from your program. So you are not changing the workflow, we're just adding a step or two in there to make sure that they get connected appropriately. All right, so before we get into all those details, Liz is going to talk a little bit about the rapid rehousing program for you.
Right, thanks, Kim. So as many of you know, the rapid rehousing program began back in May of 2013. So we have been working with it, and throughout we've kind of altered a couple of things. And since we're getting prepared to reopen the rapid rehousing program, we want to use this time to help you prepare and kind of just review those forms and the process, so that way once it does reopen, we're not having to kind of play catch up in a sense. Just as a reminder, the Rapid Rehousing Program is funded through the Emergency Solution Grant that was awarded to the City of Chicago. The Emergency Fund serves as a system coordinator for the Rapid Rehousing Program and works with the different Rapid Rehousing partners. As you see on the screen, the Rapid Rehousing Program is a housing first intervention, which is used to rapidly connect families and individuals experiencing homelessness to permanent housing. They provide a tailored package of assistance. They resolve immediate challenges and barriers to housing, links to community resources, and have the goal to reduce the amount of the time the person spends being homeless. Just as a reminder, previously, if you've participated in the Rapid Rehousing Program, you're kind of familiar how we were trying to pair up your referrals with a certain Rapid Rehousing Partner agency. However, we noticed that this really wasn't working very well. Sometimes there were some referrals that were kind of placed on hold just because the agency had limited spots. So since it didn't work out exactly as we envisioned, we went back and we kind of modified that. So this year, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be matching your referrals based on the funding sources. Allow me to expand a little bit more on that. Since some of our partner agencies now have a specific funding that serves different populations, such as single families and veterans, once we receive those referrals and your client fits that criteria, we're going to send that to that specific agency. So we'll be working a lot on that, and once we get to the time of reopening the Rapid Rehousing Program, you will be receiving an email communication. So if you're joining us via email, we have you on our email communication list. If you did not receive an email from us, please contact me. So that way we can be sure to add your email address on. Once we reopen it, an email communication will be sent out, and we will be talking about the number of referrals we will be accepting. If sometimes due to the limited amount of spots that open up, we may have to place a limit of maybe 1 or 2 referrals per agency. So please be mindful of that, since we do not want to receive a whole lot of referrals and just have people waiting there due to the lack of space. Okay? Next slide, please. So before we get into kind of just going into the nitty-gritty of the process, you want to know who is eligible for your program. So there are 3 criteria for which your households are eligible for the Rapid Rehousing Program. They must be homeless. They must be experiencing homelessness, income, and not any other resources available. So we'll go to the next slide to go talk a little bit more about each one of them. So when we talk about anyone experiencing homelessness, we want to see a household, which is an individual or family, that is in your program or is living on the streets. Doubled up households, unfortunately, are not eligible for the Rapid Rehousing Program. And if you refer someone and they leave your facility to stay with someone for a few days, they are unfortunately no longer eligible, unless they return to your site or another transitional housing program. For income, we are looking for households that have an income. Only cash income is counted. So for example, income from employment, unemployment, child support, SSI, VA benefits, or any TANF. There is no maximum or minimum monthly income for the referrals. There is a maximum that will be informed at the 3-month reevaluation point. Since this program is considered a short-term assistance program, we have to, as you're referring individuals, please think of those households that would be able to take on the full cost of their housing in no more than 8 months. So that's really important to keep in the back of the minds of everybody, because this, like we mentioned, it is a short-term program. And the last criteria to qualify for the Rapid Rehousing Program is that they must have no other resources available. So what we mean by this is that the household doesn't have either a savings account or has some family and friends that they can stay with in order to help them kind of move out of your facility.
And just to interrupt for 1 second, I did see it looks like someone raised their hand and then put it back down. So if someone did have a question, go ahead and type that in, and we'll make sure that we get to that. So I can't see who it was, but if you do have a question, just type that in and we'll answer it.
Thank you, Kim. So here on your...
And here we've got our question. Thank you. So the question is that do you understand that each agency can send 2 to 3 referrals, but how often? So that's getting at your point about opening up referrals, Liz. Do you want to answer that one?
Great. So yes, for the time being right now, we'll be taking a look at, 1 to 2 to 3 referrals. Once we receive those from each of the agencies, if we still have some openings, we will go ahead and continue communication with everyone. So if we see that maybe there's more spaces available, we'll be contacting you as well to let you know that you can send more referrals. So just be on the lookout for those email communications because they're going to be very important and very time sensitive. A great question.
Yeah, and just to emphasize too, so when we sent out the invitations for this webinar, we went through sort of our Rapid Rehousing interim provider contact list. So if, as Liz mentioned before, if you didn't get that email and you are the main contact person, please send a message to Liz. And because I did get a couple sent my way that said, please add me to your list, which was perfect. We forward that on. So if you want to be in the know regarding all that, if that's appropriate for your position, please make sure that you get that information.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So here are some Rapid Rehousing resources. So as Kim mentioned in the beginning, she's going to be going through the form and just through the workflow and the consent forms. So if you're wondering where you can find all that information, you can follow the following links. and at hmis.thechicagoalliance.org, you'll be able to find all the information about the workflow, the consent forms, and so forth. I also went ahead and included the Rapid Rehousing brochure. This is something new that some of you may see. It's pretty much a quick overview of kind of what the Rapid Rehousing Program is and the eligibility requirements, and you can find that on the allchicago.org website. So you could just type in that link that's shown on your screen.
So just a couple more questions that came in. The first one is a great question, and that is that do people who do not have U.S. citizenship qualify for rapid rehousing?
That's a great question. I'm trying to think back.
You can always respond to that later if you'd like. But we do have a response from Amanda Borda who says yes. So Amanda has told us remotely that, look how quick we work over here, that yes, if you do not have U.S. citizenship, you still would qualify for rapid rehousing as long as you meet that other those criteria that Liz mentioned regarding your homeless status, your income, and then also that you do not have any other resources available to receive permanent housing. So there you go. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you.
And then Denise has a question too, which I think is a question that comes up all the time. And sorry, let me go back. Amanda sent a follow-up thing before I get to Denise's question, and that is that she wants to make sure everyone is aware that as long as the landlord will work with the client without documentation, they should be fine as long as they meet eligibility requirements. So, yes, it's still send in the referral, and then the partner agency will help to make sure that that is an appropriate sort of arrangement with the landlord. That's an important piece. So back to Denise's question, which is a good one as well, that the question is, would those with unconventional income methods, such as cash pay, also qualify? I think that was a nicely worded thing about unconventional income methods. So I don't know, Liz, if you want to talk about that, or I can give some of my, I know if I can jump in, and then Liz, you can add as well, is that the issue with that Liz had mentioned with rapid rehousing and appropriate clients is that it is a program where assistance can go up until 8 months. So when you're talking about unconventional, you want to see if it can be sustained and even increased. So, you know, we were actually just talking about a veteran and connecting them to rapid rehousing who gets, you know, sort of contract jobs here and there. And so the question was, if you don't know how long the income's going to go, and it wasn't a good amount, like not a huge amount of income to support rent, then how will that veteran in this case be able to support their rent in a long term if it doesn't go away? So I think definitely you can sort of send that in later. We can take a look at the referral, but you really, I would say you want to focus on, can they take on a greater percentage of the rent over time, and then be able to do that independently longer term.
Great, Kim. That's a great point, because you also do want to focus on, you don't want to set up your client to fail. So even though, you know, your client can be referred and is accepted, they'll receive that 8 months assistance, but you don't want to put that family back into homelessness because they're unable to take on that full cost. So that's a really important aspect to look at that.
I love it. The questions are coming in, so we're going to take a couple more. The next question is that do people who have evictions in their history qualify? And I know we have a couple of partner agency representatives on the webinar too, and I can tell you from working with them is that they face, you know, people who have evictions do participate in rapid rehousing, and they have worked with fine landlords that will connect those people with the appropriate apartment. So I don't know if you want to add to that, Liz, but I know those agencies work really hard at that.
Right. I think that has been one of the challenges rapid rehousing providers have faced. However, that's not just because your client had some eviction in the past is not a reason not to refer them to rapid rehousing.
And then the question came in, how long does rapid rehousing last? So it's up to 8 months, but we should mention that every 3 months they get recertified. So it's not a guaranteed 8 months. It's really 3 months at a time.
Right. That's correct.
And then we had a question too, what if the client has other children that are staying with the family? Can they put them on the referral as well? And are you talking about, Don, are you saying that they have other children staying at the interim housing provider, or that they're hoping that once they receive an apartment that the children would stay with them? Just to sort of clarify that. So send in a response and we'll come to your question. In the meantime, Sandra's pushing us back to U.S. citizenship. So the question is, do they have to be a legal permanent resident, or families with no legal statuses also qualify? And I'm just going to go back to Amanda's comment that if they don't have documentation, so any documentation of permanent legal status, that won't disqualify for rapid rehousing. It just means that those partner agencies will have to find the appropriate landlord that will work with that identified client or family. So Donna, let us know, give us some more details and we'll get back to your question. We won't forget, but let us know a little bit about where they might be staying. All right, so and Amanda's adding too that she's got some guidelines for us that says that the person that you refer must be a quote-unquote qualified alien, but the rapid rehousing partner is not required to verify the person as a qualified alien. So hopefully that helps a little bit. And Amanda added that if it would be helpful, we can send out the exact guidance regarding this issue following the webinar so that you can review it within your program, and also just to make that determination about the best client to include. So we can send that out. So I think that's a great idea. All right, so let's get to Donna again. So Donna's response is that they have some at the shelter, but some are staying with the family while they're at the shelter, or with the family outside of the shelter. So Liz, I don't know if you want to take that question. So how do you want that referral to be set up? If they've got some family members at the interim housing provider and some family members who aren't technically homeless.
Right. So I think as we're looking at that route, because your point is to, in a sense, you want to reunify the family under one. So if the head of household, if that mom or the head of household is in interim housing providers, but the children are not, I would still go ahead and list them on your referral, just because, you know, I know some shelters separate families due to, you know, limitations and so forth. So just go ahead and include them on there.
And what I would add to that too is that, you know, I was wondering about if the question had to do with who's homeless or not. But the main thing is that we usually have the referral go through the head of household. So if your head of household meets all the criteria that were previously listed, then you should be okay as far as making sure that they qualify. And then the children, we would make that connection with the rapid rehousing partner agency and make sure they understand where everybody's at and what that means, and how do you have the units or number of bedrooms available and all that good stuff. So hopefully that'll work. Let's take just one more question for now. And Donna, you are welcome. So the question is, at the 3-month reevaluation, what will the max income be? That's a good question. Is there a risk of them losing their assistance at 3 months? So that's getting at the AMI.
Yep. So they, as mentioned, they are reevaluated every 3 months, and there is a maximum income guideline. However, we don't have that information off the top of our heads for this webinar, but it is expected for individuals to carry on that household expense from that point. So that is something to keep in mind, that if you do have a client you know, that you're referring to that maybe is just experienced kind of a short-term loss of income or something of that nature with very little income, that is a possibility that after 3 months they would be expected to take on that expense.
Absolutely. So it's a good question too, and there is, as Liz indicated before, when they first are referred to rapid rehousing, there is no AMI limit as long as they have income. But at that 30-day mark, they do have to be below a certain AMI level, because, again, you will run across people that have a good amount of income. They just need a little bit of assistance, maybe getting connected to the right landlord, the right unit, and maybe a little help with paying off of something. And then they can keep moving forward in their apartment, and that's really who the rapid rehousing is targeted for. People who end up in a shelter setting who might not necessarily need to be there, they just needed a little bump in assistance. So the 8 months isn't guaranteed. It really is the 3 months at a time. But people with lower income, at a lower level of the AMI, might need a little bit more time to help get connected to other income or benefits or resources so that they can support themselves independently once the full rapid rehousing assistance stops for them. So I hope that helps. All right, so great questions. Feel free to keep sending them in. We'll get to them again. I do want to move on to a few of the details now about how do you actually, now that you know the criteria, you know what it's going to lead to, how long it's going to last, how do we actually get them connected? So what I want to do is talk about our workflow, and I also want to talk about the rapid rehousing client consent for data sharing. Because when we started rapid rehousing, initially, this was the first time we were actually opening up information. So the interim housing provider has the entry that they complete. Before they were completing the comprehensive assessment, now they're completing the HUD and COC ESG entry. And that information we would share with the housing provider that they got matched to for rapid rehousing so they could start to see that information and understand income and the different sort of resources that they were available. We also shared that initial assessment that was completed and the referral that was done. So we still are going to do that sharing. And so I just want to show you really quickly that this is our HMIS help desk site, and hopefully it looks familiar to a lot of you. As we had on the screen, and I'll put up again, that the address is hmis.thechicagoalliance.org. And you will find the rapid rehousing information here regarding workflows under workflows. We have our rapid rehousing workflow, which we'll get to in a moment. But the consent form is under consent forms, right? So you'll see it's towards the bottom here. You'll see rapid rehousing client consent form. And if you click on that, it just sort of opens up the article, as they call it. And once you click on the article, it'll take you to the page. And it's a little hidden. But from here, if you just click on the link that has the PDF attached to it, you'll be able to have the document download within your computer. So what we recommend doing is typing in and it looks like it's still a locked field, so we'll make sure that's unlocked. But we just recommend having that saved somewhere internally at your program so you don't have to keep putting in that information over and over again. But what I do want to do is spend just a little bit of time talking about what makes this different from the regular HMIS client consent form for data sharing. And basically, you do want to meet with your client to explain to them what this means. So if you notice, we have a few pieces of information that were previously, they had the ability to say, yes, I want to share this, or no, when they first came to your program. And that is their name, their date of birth, their social security number, their gender, and now their military veteran status as well, which we'll have to add. And so that was just across the board, that they could come to your program, say they wanted to share it, and anyone who did a search would only see that information, nothing else. And if they didn't want to share it, then nobody saw that. Now, what we want to add to that now is that we want to include other pieces of information that the rapid rehousing partner agency can view. And as it says here, it's that it's used to help determine whether they qualify for the rapid rehousing program. So you can let them know that we'll share their homeless status, right? So if they have to be homeless to qualify, we need to be able to verify and to share that they are homeless. We will share their income. Again, that'll be helpful for the rapid rehousing partner agency to see. We'll also let them know if there's other resources, again, that can help them become housed, which is part of our criteria. And then we're sharing some contact information. So how to reach them and who their current case manager is, which is what you will be doing when you do the assessment. And so below, if I scroll down a little bit, it says that yes, that client can say, I do agree to share that information with the rapid rehousing partner agency, or they can say, I don't agree to share it. Now, the one thing that's a little tricky is if they don't want to share it, we do say, to let them know we don't want to say they won't qualify for rapid rehousing by any means, but we have to let the partner agency know whether they qualify for or not, and to be able to screen that. So we do want to make sure that they understand that being able to screen it's good to be able to see that information, to share it. So once they get connected to the partner agency, they'll have to go through a whole other assessment too as well to get a lot more information. But this is just to see really quickly, do they qualify? So and let me know if you have any questions regarding that, but we do say that the form expires for 1 year from the signature date, and just like we do for our other consents, they do have the ability to revoke their consent. So if they had said, yes, I want to share, and then later said, no, I thought about it, I don't, same process goes. They always have the right to change their mind. They'll go ahead and print their names of themselves, including their children, which I know for some families you guys all kind of squish it in, but that's okay. We sometimes have enough room, sometimes not enough. And then the head of household or the adults can go ahead and sign the form, date it. You'll have a witness at your agency who will sign it as well and then put the date. And I should mention too that if you have a household with one adult and multiple children, the adult can sign for the children, but if you have 2 adults, so 2 people over 18, they should each sign their own consent form for the adults, so that'll be covered on there. So Rhonda, you asked a good question. If you would be given a list of all the available resources that could potentially disqualify them. So it's a good request. I would say that, that is that sort of third criteria is put on there to see that, someone could be homeless at this point in time and have a connection to permanent supportive housing or some type of permanent housing coming up. So I don't know if we would have a complete list of everything that could qualify, but what you do want to talk to your client about is sort of like, what's the situation where they're coming from and what do they have available for them right now that could help get them connected, whether it's returning to live with a relative or something like that. So it's just a little bit of screening that you could do ahead of time so that, again, we can ensure that the right referrals make their way to the partner agencies. Any other questions about the consent form?
And I know I just wanted to go ahead and jump in, Kim. One thing that we did want to mention, previously this form was sent over to us and we would just verify before we went ahead and moved along the referral. We're actually moving away from that, so that's great for you because you won't have to send in any additional information to us. But you will have to keep this form on file. So just make sure that you do have that, and we will probably be moving toward having a spot check, so probably just asking for these forms randomly. So you do want to make sure that you do have that form. And as Kim mentioned, you want to make sure that one of those check boxes is checked off. I know kind of some of the trouble areas that we had previously when the rapid rehousing referral was open is that we did receive a lot of those forms, but and we did get the signature and the names and the agency on top. However, one of those check boxes wasn't checked off, or both of them were checked off. So just make sure that you read the form and fill it out entirely and just hold it back on file, because you don't ever want us to kind of do a spot check and you have to kind of go back and redo all those forms for all your clients.
That's a great point. And we did have another question come in from Rhonda going back to the available resources, which is a good question. Does a certain position on a housing wait list or HCV, et cetera, disqualify them from rapid rehousing?
No, it does not. So I think that's kind of one of the great things about rapid rehousing is that perhaps, there's a waiting list, and as you know, with a lot of waiting lists, there isn't a real set time as to when they'll get their housing. So it could be maybe in 3 months, in a year, 2 years. Unfortunately, that's kind of one of the things with the waiting list. So if you do have a client who anticipates kind of getting that housing maybe in the next 6 months or so, they would be a great candidate for this because they would have that housing and they wouldn't be homeless, in that interim period.
Great. And back to the consent a little bit too. Maggie asked the question, which is a great question. Is the consent form available in Spanish? So unfortunately, we do not have it in Spanish yet. Our goal is to have it in Spanish, and we can let you know when that is going to have to be put in place, but we do not have it in Spanish at this point in time. And Lauren asked a question too, if a client is seeking custody of their grandchildren but has not received it, can they add the children to their household and consent form in order to seek housing for all of them? So Lauren, if that's a really good question. So if the grandmother in this example and the grandchildren are all in the placement together, you can still, if they don't have the ability to sign consent for the children, the grandmother can still open up their record and share, because a lot of the income, as we know, is under the in this case, the grandmother, and then we can keep the children's records locked, and then whenever that custody might come through, we could always open it up. But as long as that head of household is able to sign for themselves, I think that could help with the process. See, these good things come up all the time, good questions. All right, so and keep sending them in. They're so helpful. I do want to show you, if I go into service points, which I'm going to log into now, that as I indicated before, you're still going to follow the usual workflow. So you would already had the client in your program. So I'm going to go to my fake client here, and you'll see he's been in a lot of programs. So basically, he will need oh, and I do see a hand that went up again, so if you go ahead and type in your question instead of raising your hand. But what you will want to do is to add your release of information. So once you've filled that out with the client, signed it, had them check off everything they need to check off, then you'll do something similar. You'll come to Add ROI, so don't change or get rid of your existing release. Instead, you'll click on Add ROI, which you can do from your Summary tab, or you can always go to the ROI tab above, whatever is more comfortable with the way that you have become familiar with using Service Point. You would click on Add Release of Information if you're here. You would indicate all of the household members that you have consent for. So if you have a head of household and children and they say, yes, I'm going to sign this for the children, you can click them off. Or in the case that Lauren just gave, you could always keep grandmother checked off and then not check the other children who might be part of the household within the interim housing provider. You would choose your provider, and you would always make sure, again, that that is your level 2 name, so your big agency name. And we'll just keep that consistent with our workflow. You'll indicate whether they had said, yes, I agree to share. So if they said yes, you would say yes. Your start date would be the day that they signed it, and the end date would be 1 year from the date of signature. If they had said no, then your start date and your end date are basically the day that they sign it and they match. So we're going to pretend this client said yes, and then the end date I'm going to put in is next year. And then what you want to do is choose the documentation. The usual one that you select is this first one, but you want to select the one that has the RRH in front of it, because we just have a report set up that's going to say, yes, they did the rapid rehousing consent, and it's looking for that response. And then the witness is going to be whoever was the staff member who signed that form. So whether it's you or somebody else, you'll put in that witness name and then click on Save Release of Information, and now you'll have the 2 documents. So you have one for your regular program and then the other one for rapid rehousing. So I'm just going to go back to the Summary tab really quickly, so you'll see now I've got the 2 releases there, and that's going to be normal for your program. You'll have one release for your regular program and one for rapid rehousing. And see, and it looks like, Gary, you're going to send me a question. It looks like you started it, so I'll wait till you finish that too. And then Rhonda asked a question too, do people who have previously participated in rapid rehousing, completed the program but are now homeless again, are they able to qualify? So if they had gone through rapid rehousing and now are homeless, can they reapply? It's a good question.
We'll have to take a look at that, but I know that's one of the things that we're kind of hoping that rapid rehousing helps in that sense that people do not re-enter homelessness, but I would have to double check on the guidance for that.
And Amanda added to that if you do have someone, Rhonda, who meets that criteria that you just wrote about, that you would want to contact us at the Alliance, because there's an 8-month maximum for the receipt of assistance. So that depending, I guess what Amanda would say too is that if depending on how much assistance they got would, that would probably get at whether they qualify or not. So how much they had received previously. So yes, go ahead and just reach out to us at the Alliance. And then Gary's question came through. How long or what is the time frame when a client is referred to the program that they will be connected to the case manager, and how long will they have before they get housed? So that's a great question, and I know what Liz had mentioned too about the goal is not to really have this long wait list. The goal is that as soon as the partner agencies have spaces in their caseload, that if the person meets the eligibility criteria, whether it's a veteran or a single or a family, and there's that open spot, they'll get connected. It'll be fast. So as long as people don't send in too many referrals, which I know has happened in the past, and then everyone says, what's happening? The goal is to match them immediately to the opening.
Right. So yeah, so it's really important to have, the consent form signed, do the referral in HMIS so that way we're aware of who you're sending over so we can connect you with the appropriate rapid rehousing partner. From that point on, the rapid rehousing partner will contact your client and, set up a time to kind of review the eligibility and do the assessment. From that point forward, since the rapid rehousing partner works with the client to locate housing, I know that's kind of a spectrum because it depends on kind of the unit size, the location, and all these other items that the housing provider has to kind of look at. So as they're working with the client, but they should be matched up with their rapid rehousing partner and start working with them as soon as we possibly can. But as Kim mentioned, we do want to kind of limit that amounts of referrals that are coming in, so we want to be able to match clients up with the rapid rehousing partner and not have anyone just kind of sit there waiting until an opening is opened up.
Absolutely. So let's talk about how do we make that connection. So we talked about the release of information. You know where to find the client consent for data sharing. You know where to enter an in-service point. So the next piece is how do you make that assessment? So how do you tell us at the emergency fund, really, I keep saying Alliance, but it should be the emergency fund. How do you give the information here so that Liz can say, yep, they do qualify and can pass that assessment and referral onto the appropriate partner agency? And so the way that you can do that is, that hasn't changed. You'll come to the entry exit tab. So you can't navigate to that through the summary tab. For this, you do have to come through one of the tabs above. You'll click on the entry exit tab. And then you'll find your current entry. So again, they do have to be entered into your program first. So here's my entry, the existing one. I've got so many entries here, but we're going to look at this one. You would come to the interim column here. So you won't have an exit. This is my test client who gets played with a lot. But you would come to this interim column. You'd find your entry. Go ahead and click on that column. And then what you would do is you would click on Add Interim Review. So you might have a bunch of other ones in there if you're doing updates or annual assessments, but you'll want to create a new one, Add Interim Review, and then it's going to automatically have your entry provider. So it would say, for example, Cornerstone or whatever program that they're at. Your entry type's going to be there already. It's based on what you did at entry. The main things that you have to focus on are the two that come next. The first one is the Interim Review type. So you'll go ahead and find the Rapid Rehousing Initial Assessment and Referral. So it says Assessment and Referral. It's all wrapped up in one. You'll click on that, and then you want to look at the review date. So the review date, it's sort of a weird term, but it's because we're under interim reviews, but it's really the date of this assessment that you completed. So if you did it today, great. The date's going to automatically be today. If you did it yesterday, just go ahead and set back that date. So that is sort of showing us when you actually got that information, but hopefully it's the same day, right? And then you would click on Save and Continue. Oops, and I forgot, since I have an exit, I have to modify that a little bit. Let me see if I remember what I have to do. By 10:16. Oh, I chose a hard one. I thought I had chosen my easy one, but I'll get this. You won't have to worry about that because you won't have an exit.
So as Kim's going through that, just as a reminder, everyone should have this interim review option be available. If for some reason you're not able to find it throughout the many tabs, just make sure to give us a call. And we can easily add that in. I know in the past there were a couple providers that said that they sent in a referral, but I wasn't able to see it, and the reason is that this wasn't available to them. So just make sure that if you don't see it, to please contact either Kim or myself, and we'll be able to make that tab available to you.
Sorry, I'm doing a quick little edit for my client, so just so we don't have that pop up. So one moment, we'll be ready. I'm going to do a quick little entry. Don't do this at home, but this will just be a little bit easier. All right. Okay, so here's my entry that you would have done already. I'm just going to get out of there. And then what you would do is you would go to that interim column, click on there, as we said before. You're going to have everything carry over. We've got our type, our date, our rapid housing initial assessment and referral. And then you'll click on Save and Continue. And once you're there, it's a really short assessment, but it gets at a lot of important information. So at the beginning, it asks a question, is the client currently homeless? So hopefully we'll say yes, because that means they qualify. Does the client currently have any income? So you could always say no if that's true. You will want to give some information in this text box below, because I know sometimes we've seen referrals that say no, but they just started working, they should get their first check whenever it was. So you could always use that little area to plead your case, but they should have income. And then, do they have any other resources that could help them get housed? And once you answer those questions, you could always put in your comments as needed here. And then the next important step is to put in your information and the client's information, because this will be opened up to the housing provider, the Rep Your Housing Partner Agency, and they'll be able to reach out to both you and the client. So you would put in the client's phone number here. You would put in their email address if they have that. And then you will want to include your name as the current case manager. So go ahead and type that in. We do have it show up like with some of the data that gets put in, it's associated with it. But if it's you, go ahead and put in the current case manager. If you're putting this in and it's a different case manager, just go ahead and just fill in who they can contact so the partner agency knows who to reach out to. And then just as we did for the client, you'll put in the case manager's phone number, and then you'll put in their email address as well. And then what we do want to focus on here, and I have a little explanation that pops up if you hover over it, but also if the client has any communication or language needs, go ahead and emphasize that here. So it could be something about the minutes on their phone, so that you should text them instead of call, or when they normally reload, or it can be, if you need to make sure that there's a certain person available who can speak a certain language, just indicate that all in there so that the partner agency knows how best to reach the client. Also, if you say, I'd rather be there when you reach out to them the first time, please contact me. Whatever those are, put that information there, and the partner agency will be able to see that.
Great points, Kim. Yes, just to make an emphasis, because we have run across cases where the rapid rehousing providers has been made several attempts to contact your client, and in the referral portion, only their phone number is included. So make sure I know for some of you, you may work at different sites, so if you have your main number or maybe a cell phone is better, we just want to be able to make that connection. So if you want to include any of that information, if an email is better and you would like to be contacted because your client maybe doesn't have a phone or an email address, just make sure to list that so that way the provider can contact you, and therefore you guys can arrange for a connection.
Absolutely, and there were a few other questions that had to do with referrals and things that we'll get to, but regarding the phone number, Donna asked a question that if the client does not have a phone number, can they use the shelter number? So I would say use the case manager's number and put in that little sort of comment area regarding communication, put in there that they don't currently have a phone and who to call, So it's better if it goes to a person rather than like the shelter in general. So that way they know who to reach out to. All right, so I'll come back to the other questions in just a moment just to finish out this step. Once you've answered these very important questions at the top and put in the very important contact information, you'll go ahead and click on Save and Exit, and then you'll have the assessment. You can see that it's there, and then from this point you'll click on Exit. And really, you're done. So you put in, if I go back to the Summary tab, you will have signed that ROI with the client. You'll put it into Service Point. You'll go to the Entry Exit tab, find that inter-review client, open it up, put in your assessment for the client, and then the only other thing you would do is once they hopefully leave your program because they're in their own apartment, then eventually you'll just exit them out of your program. And so we do have a document available which you can find on our help desk site, which I showed you in that workflow section, which will go through these steps in a lot more detail that you can have, or not in a lot more detail, but at least you have it in writing. So they'll talk about the release of information, goes through how to put that in as a reminder. Oops, I went too fast. And then it will cover how to find the intern review, how to put it in, what to select, and then it just provides a reminder about exiting them once they leave your program. To a couple other questions before we bring things together to wrap up. And I'm just going to go back to the ones that we have. So going back to contacting us at the Emergency Fund, is there someone we can contact to request the status of a submitted rapid rehousing referral?
Yes, great question. So you can always contact me. My email address is eperez@allchicago.org. So I know sometimes that connection, you're not sure whether your client's been contacted or you just kind of want to know an update. So feel free to send me an email. I know sometimes, as we were talking about the initial assessment in HMIS, sometimes case managers have reached out to me because they submitted a referral. However, for some reason, a step was missed, and when I'm pulling a report, that referral doesn't come through, and that's where we've been able to kind of pinpoint the problem. So definitely, if you haven't heard from anyone, feel free to give me a call. I know other trouble areas that have come arise has been that, the rapid rehousing partner hasn't been able to make that connection. So I've been able to connect the rapid rehousing providers with the interim housing providers to make that connection. So yes, by all means, feel free to shoot me an email, just asking. Just be sure to include the client's HMIS ID number, so that way I can kind of look it up and let you know what the status is.
Great, and then there's a question that's next, is that regarding that limit of 2 to 3 referrals per agency, just for clarification, is that 2 to 3 referrals per agency or per program within the agency?
Currently, we're looking at 2 to 3 per agency, and I know that may be troublesome for larger agencies. Since right now we are currently still trying to pinpoint how many openings the rapid rehousing providers may be, we can open it up to be 1 or 2 per program. So once we send out that communication, it'll give that detailed information.
All right, and then there's a question, will the rapid rehousing partners also contact the referring case manager? In my experience, clients get calls but do not understand what they are and decline the help, or in some cases do not take the call. And so, Byron, actually, that's a great point. So what I would say is, and I think that happens a lot because you don't really know who people are, and for a lot of reasons, sometimes it's good to get the person involved who has a good relationship with them. So go ahead and put that into the sort of comment area on the assessment, and that's something, too, that Liz can share with the rapid rehousing partner agencies, too, is that, that this might be a good sort of practice to adopt.
Right, and I think going back to the initial assessment, that section on additional information, if you kind of foresee that your client may be a little bit hesitant, that doesn't pick up calls that are unknown, just make sure to include that, that you would like to be contacted as well, just to make sure that that connection is successful.
Great, and a couple more questions because I know we're getting close to 11. So Gary, you asked a question that in the past clients were given 30 or 60 days to locate housing, and if they did not locate a unit, they were exited out of the program, meaning the rapid rehousing program, I'm guessing. So is that process still active? Maybe we can get back to Gary. That's a great question. Just for time's sake, Gary, we can probably follow up with you individually. And Lisa, you asked you had asked, like, did I say that the client has to be entered into your program in order to be entered into rapid rehousing? If this is so, how does this work if the client is a duplicate in my program, therefore only being placed into shelter point? Can I still refer the client into rapid rehousing? So we might have to talk a little bit individually about that too. They should be entered into your program. If you have a duplicate issue going on, I'll have to take a look at your program. But the assessment isn't attached to that interim feature, so they do have to be entered into your program first. Plus, you know, we want them to be in a program that's who we're targeting. So let me follow up with you regarding that duplicate issue. And I was waiting for this question to come. Oh, and Amanda had added to that currently the guideline is 60 days. I assume this is back to Gary's question. But we can work with that on an individual basis as well. So hopefully that works, Gary. But we can reach out to you. And then this is the question I was waiting for that Emma asked. When do you think rapid rehousing will be opening again? So Emma went right to it.
That's a great question, Emma. Right now, we do not have a definite date, but we do anticipate opening it up in the upcoming weeks. So, you know, please, you know, review the workflow, make sure that all staff that are going to be coordinating referrals are aware of the steps. So that way, once we release that email, you kind of hit the road running, so to speak. So it'll be soon. Unfortunately, I can't give you a date as to how soon that will be, but it will be soon.
All right, so Liz's going to quickly go over what happens if you don't use HMIS, and these are for programs that don't use it.
Yes, so for those programs, I know we've focused a lot on HMIS, and I do apologize that you kind of had to sit and hear through all that, and you don't even get to participate in HMIS. But for those they can. Well, some can. Domestic violence providers, you cannot participate in HMIS, and for those other non-participating HMIS providers. So I know in the past what we've done is you've sent out an email to either Kathleen or myself letting us know what your client's information is, and we've kind of been sending emails back and forth. What we're going ahead and move toward is for you to complete the referral through Survey Gizmo. So it's going to be a quick survey, and just the basic questions that you've seen in HMIS.
And if you can email out that link to the non-HMIS.
Yes. So if you do not participate in HMIS and you're not able to see that link, just make sure that you email me at eperez@allchicago.org, and I'll be sure to send you the link. So here on your screen, you'll see it'll ask from what agency, the project name, who's completing the referral, so most of the time that's you, your client's first name and last name, and the number of families in the household. So, and then it'll go on to ask you about those eligibility criteria that we went over. And once we have that information, we'll be able to make that connection and let you know kind of what the outcome is. Okay?
Great. And going back to our slideshow here. So regarding HMIS, definitely reach out to us. We do have our help desk site on here where we can also include a link for the non-HMIS users, just so we're not avoiding you completely. But definitely you can find the workflow there. I'm going to post I made a few changes yesterday, so I'm going to post that today. And the consent forms are already there. We do have to just add one piece to it, but the current one is fine, and then we'll just add the next one. You can, if you have a service point or HMIS related question, you can contact us by phone or email. And then I don't think we have your contact information on here.
No, I actually forgot to put that on there. So yeah, feel free to contact me, you know, for all those questions, kind of status updates and so forth, at eperez allchicago.org. So we're going to go ahead and put that on your screen now, so that way you can feel free to shoot me an email, and that way I can address your concern as soon as I can.
Great. Oh, and it's treating this as a hyperlink too. Great. So, so this is Liz's name and her email address. So you can definitely reach out to her. Please direct the rapid rehousing referral questions to her. If you send them to HMIS, we'll have to just send them to her anyway. We won't know all those details, but we will help you with anything that you encounter in Service Point. So we'll definitely take care of that for you. But I will say that we do thank you so much. We had a huge amount of participants today, which was so nice to see, because the more people that get the information will send us referrals, and they'll be the right referrals to get people connected to Rapid Rehousing. Thank you also to the Rapid Rehousing Partner Agency representatives who participated today. Thank you so much. And I do have to say, these are always my most favorite webinars, when we get a flood of questions, and not just the number, but that they're really well thought out. And so we appreciate that. We will follow up with Gary. We can send out some more information about the citizenship and qualification issue that was raised. We'll definitely reach out to Lisa. We'll let you know about I'll find out more about that duplicate issue that you were talking about. We are working on getting the consents in Spanish, and so when we have that for all of our consents, we'll let everybody know. But until then, look forward to receiving word that Rapid Housing is ready to go. We're glad that you are helping to house our vulnerable people, especially our veterans. I have to throw that in there, that Chicago has a huge initiative to house our veterans. So thank you to you all for helping to refer them, and to Heartland Human Care Services for working to house them as well. So with that, I think we are done with our webinar.
Right, and also just to add on, this webinar was recorded. So if you kind of just want to take a look back and review it, or maybe share it with a colleague who was unable to sit in on the webinar, you can feel free to access it, and we'll send out the information on where you can connect to view that.
Great. All right. So with all of that, I will go ahead and end the webinar and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you all.
Thank you.